Next one comes in from Big Bad Mama for $2 to Jamie. Do you believe in speciation after the flood?
Big Bad Mama, one of my best frenemies. Um, so yeah, I believe in variation after the flood. I wouldn't say speciation because I think that there might be different characteristics of variation. When you use the term speciation, you're automatically assuming or building in the assumption that it's going to follow all the characteristics of what evolutionists would define speciation. So I do believe in variation, but I don't see that variation going past a certain point, and we can test that by artificially selecting things. And when we do that, we see that there are limits to how far we can push the genetic pool.
I wish we talked more about this because I wanted to explore what the limits are. I don't think that just because dogs, we can't breed wings on dogs or something like that. I don't understand where the limitation is still, because we can change the shapes of dogs. I want to know how far that can go. Yeah.
There are size limitations. Like there are people that want to breed bigger cows, but they can't get them to become super massive, like 90 feet tall. And if you take like you showed in your opening, because there's limits, and so if you showed in your opener that the shrinking of hind limbs, what if you ran it back the other way? Can those legs become or fins become massive and become 20 feet long?
A good counter argument to that for the evolutionists is if all of these animals eventually evolved from the same line, why can't we get a cow as tall as a giraffe? Because giraffes obviously exist, cows exist, they came from the same line, so why can't we get a giraffe cow? Right?
It has everything to do with selection pressure, right? And the environment isn't selecting for a giraffe cow. The cows are able to reproduce and make fine and make babies on their own until environment changes again, and then it no longer happens. See, Taylor's got something.
I thought this was photoshopped at first, but this is in fact a super massive cow that is like 6 feet tall at the shoulders or something. Let me see if I can play it.
It's too big for the slaughterhouse.
Yeah. So I agree. You can't get a 90-foot cow, but I think there are reasonable things. Like, can you get a dog to have like more webbed feet, for example, so that it's better adapted to living a more aquatic lifestyle? Things like that are more reasonable.
Well, and that was just an example of how there are limitations to a gene pool, and there's also limitations to a gene like gene pools that can breed with one another and everything. And I'm just curious, like if you had a cow, could you artificially select for it to become more draft-like and develop a reflex where it can snap its neck up in a fraction of a second and start running? Like, would a cow, as you're artificially selecting for it to become a draft, be able to gain that function as well? Because that's a necessity. If a draft is being chased or about to be chased, it has to be able to hightail it.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, could you breed a cow with a longer neck than usual?
Right. You could do that, but you're not going to turn it into a giraffe because it's still got cow. It's canalized, right? There's a concept of canalization. I encourage you to look this up.
Limitations.
That you are restricted to your lineage, and
you admit to
you
limitations.
can get extraordinary variation within the lineage, to the point where you can have an entire new branch come about, especially in say post extinction events. That's where you have as Taylor pointed out, punctuated equilibrium and massive expansion of all kinds of different animals coming about. When all the dinosaurs were gone, you had mammals that were still around. They're mostly small, but they survived and they made their way through the KT extinction. And all these niches are now open. They were previously occupied by these giant dinosaurs. And that's when you had massive expansion and variation come about.
Yeah,
to the point where you have new kinds.
You would never be able to get an exact giraffe, and probably not breedable with giraffes unless cows already had that capability. But would you be able to get a population of cows that had 2 inches longer necks? Okay, well, you take that population. Could you add 2 inches to that? Could you add 2 inches to that later on? So is there any reasonable limit that would preclude if you could show that, okay, the neck just somehow knows not to get this long? That would be a great preclusionary evidence for evolution, but I
Well,
don't
and
see
that
it.
would growing the neck. If you could get a cow population to get the longer neck, you already have the information in your gene code to be able to make a neck. So adding length is just like there are taller and shorter people. But then if you could get a cow population to be able to produce offspring with draft, that would be something. I think
There are
everyone
examples.
That would be
agree about that.
something.
There are examples
Let's
of
let the
where we
creationists
have.
have the last word
sorry.
real quick, and then we can move
Yeah,
on to
go
the next
ahead.
question.
That's fine.
Well, and I did just want to say that right now, like with all of our scientific data, there are claims that are maybe gray areas here or there for creation to pin down what a kind is, especially because we don't really our kind and our way of classifying things might be different than what God decided was a kind to bring on the ark. So I think it's two different mindsets approaching it. But right now, all of our observations do show that the claim that evolution has with one population being able to become mushroom, plant, and animal cells, different distinct bifurcations in each of those lineages, that has never been observed. We have never observed these macro changes, which is why like creationists can agree with the evolution on the micro scale changes in population. That's everyone agrees to that, except for apparently this bubblegum guy. But the evolution claim where you can get a mushroom and a rat to come from the same lineage is something that we have never observed. And I get that there's an appeal to time there, but that is just something that we've never observed to confirm. Because if you can confirm that, you can't deny an observation.
Okay, thanks for the final word, James. Next question is for Jamie. Question from creationist crybaby Jamie. The Arctic fox and the tundra's pterygium, guessing the P's silent in that one, a specific bird, both undergo seasonal changes of color from dark to white. Explain the selective pressures that allowed their survival.
So this goes back to design and what we were talking about earlier with variations. Okay, the gene pool has variations. I never denied that. Neither does just about any other creationist out there, except for Bubblegum Gun. And if he's listening, you're wrong, Bubblegum. Okay, there is variation in the gene pool. So the fact that they changed from dark to white isn't proof for evolution. Okay, that is a minor variation. Okay, if you want to prove evolution, you need to show something like an animal that is dependent on gills in the water evolving into a bird with lungs or something around those nature. Okay, if you want to prove evolution, we need to see macro evolution evidence. All right, what they're doing here is they're trying to show a variation that is a minor variation that has no effect on the creature itself. Whether that creature is dark or white doesn't make a difference, except for that it blends into its environment more. So yeah, this is just variety within the design.
Thank you, Jamie. James, floor is yours.
So really all we're saying is we're taking that same mechanism, that same variety, okay, we're just extrapolating that out over time. And it does produce macroscopic changes. It doesn't have to. If the environment is static, the environment will select for an animal to stay relatively the same. That's why we have these living fossils. You know, the American alligator, you look back a million years ago, probably look very similar. You go into the future, it's an apex predator in its environment. Doesn't need to change. Mutations will get filtered out. But when you have large-scale changes to your environment, the environment will select and can produce these large-scale changes over time. And that's what we see in the fossil record.
Thank you, James. Jamie, question was for you. Get the last word.
Yeah, so a great way that I would describe variations to someone that maybe isn't that scientifically literate is I would say, imagine a person like Donnie who's, skinny and he wants to get more muscular. He'll go to the gym, he'll work out, he'll get buffer, right? Okay. But guess what? He didn't actually change. He just advanced his physique within the limitations of his design. Never will him working out at the gym create wings. As much as we want wings, it'll never create wings. As much as we want a tail, it will never create a tail. There is limitations within those varieties. Just like if I don't work out, and I don't exercise, I don't eat right, I will gain weight. That doesn't mean that I am now a new creature. I'm still a human being. Okay. There's limitations to variation. And it's so obvious to see in nature, but yet you and all the other evolutionists want to reject that obvious observation.
I don't know.
Okay.
Donnie looks pretty buff. I think he probably does spend a decent amount of time in the gym. Yeah.
I've been trying to grow wings for the last 20 years at the gym.
There you go.
Dude, I
Keep
dream
trying.
of wings. All right. If I dream long enough, it'll evolve, right?
My co-host has the limitation that she's unable to get pregnant, but she's not going to stop trying.
Okay, gentlemen. Actually, Jamie, if you wanted a quick final word, question was for you. Go ahead.
No, that's good. I had my last word. We're good.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Donnie, it's ptarmigan, by the way.
Ptarmigan.
Yeah.
There we go. Did you just look that up?
No. I just forgot to correct you because I didn't want to forget my point.
Cool.
The next thing was this wasn't from you directly, but it was actually from Creationist Crybaby in the chat. And he said, explain vestigial structures and how they lost their main function. First point I would make on that is losing function is the opposite of evolution. That's de-evolution. You're losing something, not gaining something. The second point I would make is how do you know that it had a main function that was lost in the first place? Maybe you just don't understand the functions of these organs. So a perfect example is, as Ken always says, the whale's pelvic bone. That is a pelvic bone that controls its penis, okay? That's its main function. Now you have decided to take that and try and add legs to it, but there's no evidence of legs on that animal. The only evidence of those legs is the fact that it has the pelvic bone that controls its penis, and it still is used today. So it never lost function and it never lost legs. End of story on that one.